So hey guys, my name's Celia, and I'm going to give you a little presentation on getting started with open source Rust, subtitled Get Good at Open Source with Embark Studios Rust Ecosystem. So kind of a mouthful, and I'm sorry for the pun, but I had to. So the talk structure for today is we're going to go over, why open source? Why should you care about open source as a software engineer, as a hobbyist? What can open source do for you? After that, we're going to go through a quick demo that I made for this presentation, which kind of demonstrates an open source workflow using GitHub, including everything you would do using open source during the day, such as forking a repository, finding an issue to work on, using branches, editing on your local machine, and then finally pushing to GitHub and creating that pull request. And then during that demo, I'm going to highlight, how to be a PR superstar. So this is just how to create a really good pull request. And finally, we're going to end it off with going over a little bit about Embark's Rust ecosystem and how you can participate in it once you're an expert after this talk. So first up, what is a GitHub? I'm sure everyone here is, or most people are familiar with GitHub. And if not, you're not alone. A few years ago, had no idea what GitHub was. I had no idea what open source was in general. I was new to computer science, and everyone was telling me to get involved with like an open source project. They said, you got to put it in your resume. It's how you get a job. It's a great way to meet people. And it turns out they were right, but I had no idea where to start. So that's why I kind of wanted to make a presentation that I wish was there when I was first starting out. So why should you do open source? Well, I think it's really cool because you get to crack open the software that you use every day. I know most of us, we might use open source software every day, but a lot of us use software that isn't open source. And it's kind of a mystery what's going on, in the back end, how it's all working. And it's kind of amazing when you open up an open source project and you can see everything that's going on. You can see what issues they're working on, what small changes are being made. You yourself can work on something. You can crack into the community and start talking to people. So that's why being an open source contributor is so rewarding, is for these 4 points. You gain a deeper understanding of the technology. Sometimes it can be a technology you've never used before. Like if you've never touched Rust, joining a community working on a Rust project, you get to have that mentorship built in. You can contribute in a small or large way, which is awesome because you can just fix a few typos, which I know a lot of people love to do, or you can change the whole game and move a whole feature forward. Again, you can put in your resume. It's a great thing to start your software engineering career on, or any career in tech. And finally, you can make connections and find community. So a little bit about us. So I work at Embark Studios, which is a video game studio in Stockholm, Sweden, a little far from me in the US, but we're working on 2 games and also a game creation platform, which is the team that I'm on. And we are obsessed with Rust. It's our language of choice, totally. And we're really obsessed with creating a Rust ecosystem and a community around it, because we maintain a lot of open source Rust projects. And having people in that community and on our Discord and working with everyone to maximize what we can do at Embark is really important to us. So that's why I get to come here today and why I am just really happy that this role exists. So yeah, without further ado, let's get familiar. I'm sorry again, but we're going to work through a open source workflow using GitHub. The exercise that I did today is how we're going to go from an empty hard drive to literally having no experience using Git, just having it installed, and to actively contributing to this open source project. And as I said, there is one prerequisite, which is that you have to have Git installed if you want to follow along. Obviously, you can just watch the presentation and not do anything, but if you want to do, I'm going to link the repository later, so if you want to go back and try it yourself, you can do that, but you're going to need Git. That's it, just Git. So cool. Let's talk about the project. So it's an interesting one. So in this imaginary world I've created, there's this open source project called restaurant-rs. And what this project does is it basically allows restaurants who want to use an open source software to display what toppings they want to put on their pizzas. That's it. That's what this little software does. And our favorite restaurant has an open source ordering system using restaurant-rs. But they're running into a strange issue, which is that their toppings are all messed up. As you can see on the right, customers are ordering tire pizzas, and that just doesn't seem right, given that that's not a topping that they actually have at the restaurant. So we're going to check out this repository and see what's going on. Okay, so this is the restaurant-rs repository. If you're new to GitHub, I think this can be a little bit overwhelming at the beginning, but it shouldn't have to be. So really the main things you have to worry about are, here's our code right here, our issues tab, and then pull requests. As a contributor, especially as a, not a maintainer, these are really all the things you have to worry about. So if I'm this person who's completely new to open source and my friend told me, oh my God, this restaurant's having this big issue, the first thing I'm going to do is just go to the issues tab and check out the issue that my friend was talking about. Our chefs are running out of wheels in their cars. So I'm going to say off the bat, not the best issue title. This doesn't tell us a lot about what's actually going wrong in the system. It's more of just complaining about the restaurant, but we're going to touch on later how to make very clear and concise issue and PR titles, but let's dig in. So our friend Pizza Fan here works at a pizzeria, and they use restaurant-rs in their ordering system to display the available toppings to customers. So customers are ordering something called tire pizza, and they have no idea why. And his brother pointed out that the orders started pouring in after a recent PR was merged, altering the pizza.rs file. Maybe that's the issue here. So already, as an open source contributor, that points out to us, okay, the issue is probably in this, and the issue arose when a recent PR was merged. So someone altered the code in this file, and now there's a problem. So we'll know where to look when we start altering the code. So what else do we have here? We do not offer tire as a pizza topping. Okay, duh. And these are the toppings that should display. So we know what needs to be changed, which is that these are the toppings that should be displaying. Okay, easy enough, right? Okay, so as an open source contributor who's new to the thing, our first step is we have the issue down. Now we are going to fork it. So you go over here and we are going to fork it to our account, which I'm gonna do my personal account. And what does forking do? It essentially just creates a copy of the core repository. It's just creating your own copy so that you can edit it and do your own thing. And then eventually when you're done changing your fixes, you can do the pull request to then merge your changes with the main. So we're gonna go all over that again, but all you have to know is it's your own copy of the project. So now we have it. And what we're gonna do next is open up PowerShell. Just gonna make sure we can see PowerShell here. Great. So make it presentable. Okay, so once we're in PowerShell, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the repository that's on GitHub and download it to our computer using Git. So we can edit it on our local machine. So the first thing we wanna do is go to this code button here. And under HTTPS, we are going to copy the code using the clipboard and go back here and write git clone and then Control V to copy it in. Oh, actually, I made a mistake. We're not going to do that yet. It's good practice to make a new folder, obviously. So I'm going to call this Linz. And then I'm going to CD into Linz. How'd you manage to get Git on Windows? So someone's asking on Discord. I'm going to include, actually in the slides, there is a link that you can just download Git. It's an easy install, so it should just take a few minutes. And then you can access it in the terminal like PowerShell. So in Linz, we are now going to do the command I was just talking about, git clone. Awesome. So we see that it has now cloned everything to Linz. If we use ls to see what's in the folder, we now see that our repository is in there. So we're going to cd into that, look at our folder again, and you'll see that all of the files that we just saw right here on GitHub are now on our computer. It's magic. Okay, so what's next? Well, now that we have everything downloaded, it's just time to edit. So what we're going to do is we're going to open Visual Studio using the code.keyword. Yep, you can still see that. Cool. Now let's check out what's happening. So as we saw in the issue, we saw that our problem was probably going to be in the pizza.rs file. So that's where we're going to head first. But it is important to check out what's happening in main. So this is a Rust program. So main is now incorporating the pizza library to run this function called available toppings. Okay, well, let's see what that actually does if we run it in PowerShell. So since this is Rust, it's super easy. We're just going to do cargo run. And here we are, we found our problem. So it's showing the available toppings are tire, 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 tire. Cool. And I see another Discord thing come in. I'll probably answer it at the end, but thank you for the message. So I think it's a pretty small code base. You can probably already see the problem, but we're going to go through each part really quickly. So in pizza.rs, we have an enum to start it with the toppings. And inside of toppings, there is a variant for each of the different toppings we want to order. Then there's going to be impl for toppings. And then under that, we're going to have a function called toString. And then finally, there's available toppings, which is the function that, as we know, is being called inside of main. So obviously, that's where our investigation should start, because that's what's going wrong. So what is available toppings doing? Well, what it's doing is storing inside of a variable each variant of the toppings enum. So we see for pepperoni, for sardines, for onions, each of them are being stored in a variable, T1, T2, etc. So right here, all it's doing is doing a print statement, available toppings, and then it is just printing each of these variables using the toString function that I've created here. So now you can probably make an educated guess what's happening. What it's doing is that no matter what the variant is, the match function is matching it to a string called tire. So this is a pretty easy fix. Let's just go in and make these correct. Hopefully I spell everything right, or else someone else is going to have to do a new PR and fix that, and then et cetera, but cool. I'm going to hit Control Save. And then let's try cargo running this again. Great, so we see it's working now. Available toppings, pepperoni, sardines, onions, bacon. Fantastic. So we are halfway there. So we have now, again, forked the repository, cloned it to our computer so we can edit it locally. We fixed the issue. And now finally, we are going to put it back online so that we can create our pull request. So how do we do this? So this is where the git commands come in. So the first git command we're going to do is called git add, and then I'm going to do a star, which means everything. And I'll explain what that is here. So what git add does is you can think of what's happening as you're stuffing an envelope. So what the envelope is we're putting all the files that we just changed inside of this envelope. And then we're going to ship it off back to GitHub. So what git add does is you put the files in the envelope, and then we use git status to see what files are in the envelope. We can see that it is pizza.rs. And then the final command I like to think about is zipping the envelope, which is going to be git commit. And what git commit does is it just finalizes that package so it can be sent up. And one thing a commit does need is a message on it. So the message should say, what does this package contain? What does it do? And what this does is it fixes the entire issue. Awesome. And you can also do something, which is if you do git commit and then -a, you can skip this, and it's just a faster way to do it. But great, now we've committed, and it's finally time to push it up. So we just do git push. And there it goes. It is now being sent to GitHub. So if we refresh our fork, we will see that 26 seconds ago, it just received a package from my computer, and it has updated the source code. And you'll see the GitHub will display the message that we sent right here. So great. Now there's just one last step. I think you remember, it's creating the pull request. And GitHub is really handy because it will tell you right here that this branch is one commit ahead of Pizza Fan Master. And what that means is that since I've fixed the issue, since I've edited the code base, now my repository is further along than the core one. And in order to make the two equal, we have to create a pull request so that my repository can be merged back into the main one. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So I hit pull request, and now it gives you a screen where it handily shows you what's been removed, the deletions, and then what's been added. Awesome. So then finally, we're just going to hit create pull request. And here's the best screen ever. We're finally ready to type it up. So what I'm going to do is leave this very quickly to just go back to the presentation and talk about, oh, it'll load, writing a good PR. So how do you become a PR superstar? There's a few just very quick important parts, which is clarity. So you just want to be very clear about what issue you tackled and how you did it, but also be concise. They don't need to know every detail of how you fixed it. Someone who's looking at it from maybe a non-technical perspective, who's just the code maintainer, or there's so many different roles in open source, but not everyone wants to know exactly what function did what unless it's relevant to what you fixed. But sometimes you can just give a brief and semi-detailed review. And as I mentioned, relevance. If you are fixing one issue, you don't want to mention another issue in your PR because that can confuse the person who's reviewing it. So you just want it to be clear, concise, and relevant. So someone who's maintaining the project can quickly go, you know what, this solves the problem, let's merge it. And some very quick and relevant to GitHub tips for becoming a PR superstar. We want to keep the PR title under 65 characters. This avoids wrapping and the text being cut off. So you can easily see it in an email or however you're receiving it in your inbox. It just makes it easier for readability. And you can add the details in the body of the PR. So you don't have to have 18 different things happening in the subject. Next, super important, is to link the issue that has been addressed. So if you've addressed, the tire issue, we're going to put that inside of the PR so that it can know, GitHub can know innately to close that issue once the thing has been merged. So you can use certain keywords to show GitHub that you have done this, which is fixes and resolves, and also a few others, I think. If the PR is unfinished or someone, gives you some feedback and they say, you know what, I think this needs a little bit more work. There's an error here or there's something wrong here. You can convert it to something called a draft PR, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's just a PR that needs rework. So it won't be merged automatically. And then finally, the most important point, I think, is that short, impactful pull requests are almost always better than long and messy pull requests. So if there's a lot of issues in a repo and you look at a few and you're like, you know what, I can solve all of these. I'm a super cool expert software engineer. And you go into the code and you solve a bunch of things at once and you do a lot of great work and all of it works and it's awesome. And then you create a pull request and you type up everything you did. While that may be cool for you, someone who's coming at that knowing nothing of what you did, it's really hard for them to read all of that and make sure that you addressed every single issue as well as you can, because they can get lost in all the text. And this goes back to our other point where conciseness is really key. So the best thing you can do is if you're going to address an issue, make a PR for that issue, and then a PR for the other issue and a PR for the other issue, so that someone doesn't have to do all of this work at once and multiple people can address different PRs. So it's good for a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons. So short, impactful over long and messy. And then we're going to go back to the pull request and give it a better title because fixes tire issue isn't the best. So I'm going to say makes available toppings function. And again, this probably isn't perfect either. I'm doing it on the spot, but you can always revise it later or clarify if someone has a question. Present the correct toppings. So we said fixes, then we're going to look at it. Our chefs are running out of wheels in their car. That is the issue. Fixes number 7 by changing the, and we can sometimes use a code block to reference a function. So I'm going to do available toppings function to correctly return the strings pepperoni, onions, bacon, what was the last one? And sardines. Previously, it was returning tire no matter what topping was chosen. Great. So this is super simple. Gets to the point. It fixes this issue by changing this function to correctly do this instead of what it was doing before. Awesome. So we're all set. We're going to create our pull request. Cool. So congratulations. You are now done. I mean, I guess I did it, but if you followed this all the way through, you went from having no experience using GitHub, using Git, to fixing an issue and then creating a pull request. As an open source contributor, you are done with your role. The code maintainer can now go into this pull request, review it, make some changes. They can leave a comment here, maybe you should fix this or add this. They can review the files that have been changed here, and then they can choose to merge it, which is awesome. So yeah, it can be that simple. So that's great. We're going to, oh, one more thing I forgot to mention, but when you're working on an issue, it can be good to, I should have done this before I made the PR, but say, you know what, I'm gonna try this issue. This is just a good practice because if there's a bunch of people who wanna try an issue, you don't all wanna be doing the same thing. And it also lets the people who maintain the code know that someone's working on it, that they might have someone to pair a program with, or it's basically just good communication. Awesome. So now we have successfully done and solved a pizza crisis. We're gonna look at a few projects that Embark has to offer. So I'm just gonna discuss very briefly a few Embark projects. We maintain a lot, but I'm gonna go over something called texture synthesis, one called Rust GPU, and PhysX RS. But as I said, there are so many we won't cover today. These are all in Rust, all repos that we maintain. So, if these don't fit the bill for you, check out some others. There's so much there. I have no idea what all these are, but there's just so much. Great. So the first one, this is one of my favorites that we maintain, is something called texture synthesis. So texture synthesis is a lightweight Rust API for example-based image generation. And if that is confusing to you, it was to me as well. So what it really means is it's combining pictures to make new pictures. 2 + 2 = 4. So you can try it yourself. All you need to do is create a new Rust project in your favorite IDE, Visual Studio or otherwise. Then you can add texture synthesis as a dependency. So if you've coded with Rust before, you just go to crates.io, look up texture synthesis, and then add it to your project. And then you can pop in your own images and combine them into cool new compositions right in the command line. So if you look over to the right, this is what's going on. You use these 3 images. You put in the code that we have sample code on the GitHub for texture synthesis. You put in that code, put these 3 images in a folder, run a little script on the command line, and you've generated a whole new image. And this produces some really crazy results. So I recommend doing this on your own pictures and showing your friends. And okay, if you did that and you're like, this is awesome, I want to do more, you can become a contributor. Because that's what I'm talking about today. It's like if you love a software or you think it's really cool, but you're like, wait, what if we did this? Or I want to try fixing something. Go for it. I'm starting with this repo, but it doesn't have the most issues of the ones we're going to discuss. But this one is open. It has 10 open issues. And feel free to tackle one or create your own. And this is an important point. Remember to create an issue before you work on something. So if you're working on texture synthesis or any open source project, if you're working with the system and you say, you know what, I see this tiny issue, I want to make a PR for it. If it's really, really small and you think it doesn't require a whole issue to explain why you want to fix it, the example being a typo in documentation, just go for it, create a PR. That's why I said typically. But if it is something that's even a little bit bigger, a good practice is just to create an issue, even if it's a really small issue, just outline what's wrong, and then do your PR, even if you've come up with a PR first, because chances are someone might notice something you don't about the issue. They could even point out that it isn't true. So it's really good to make an issue, discuss it a little bit, and then get into coding. It's also great if someone wants to tackle the issue that you don't want to tackle. So you can raise an issue and say, you know what, I don't want to deal with this. Awesome. So that was texture synthesis. Another one I want to cover is PhysX.rs. So what is PhysX.rs? It is a wrapper over the PhysX physics engine by NVIDIA, which is done in C++, but we are wrapping over it with Rust, which one of our engineers nicknamed an unholy fusion. He did a whole talk on it that you can watch that I can link to as well. But why should you use this? Well, what's great about this is you can add your own physics engine to your Rust project. And since it's an industry standard, it's feature rich, it's super reliable, and it's really cool because you get to see how we did a C++ wrapper to interact with Rust. So if you're interested in either of those languages, it's really cool how you can see them connect. And this can apply to connecting, any other two languages. And then finally, if you want to just go super simple with it, you can use this to create physics in the command line. So you can see on the right, it's a tiny ball jumping all over the command line. So there's a lot of things you can do with PhysX. Finally, the last little project I'm going to cover today is called Rust GPU. This is our recently announced project. It's really big, really popular right now, and we're really excited about it. So why is it cool? Well, Rust GPU is basically a project to make Rust a first-party language for GPU code. Those of you who are familiar with GPU code, it's basically, or who are not familiar, shader languages, or GPU code, is what you do to make things like on the right here. It's how things look and appear in game engines and on your computer. So typically these languages are just GLSL or HLSL, which are very kind of niche languages that you wouldn't get exposure to unless you were explicitly working on shader code. So this has its disadvantages. Like you have to specifically want to create shaders and do shader coding for you to explore these languages. But let's say you're just a Rust, you're someone who's a hobbyist Rust programmer, and what if you want to make a shader? Well, now you can. So that's what we're working towards. Stuff you can do right now is Rust GPU is in a state where you can already start creating simple shaders using Rust. You can share them, which is something that you can start doing if you don't even want to extend the program. So you can do that right now and share them on our Discord or Twitter or whatever. And if you want to delve deeper, you can solve open issues like implementing loops and switches. It's a very active community, so you can jump into our Discord and already start talking about it. And as I said, it's a big thing right now. So where our texture synthesis was at 10 issues, there's over 70 open issues to tackle with Rust GPU, and it's all happening, every day. Things are always changing. So yeah, as I said, again, it's like frequent discussion on Discord. You can jump in, see what's going on. You can even just jump into the comments going on any open issue, look at a PR. There's just so many different ways to get involved. And getting involved in early stages of a project is a great place to be because there's just so much ability for you to make change and really be impactful with the project. And it's really cool because you get to watch it grow and evolve. Every new release of Rust GPU invents a really cool new feature. And finally, this is just a sample. As I was saying in the beginning, when I had no idea what open source was or what GitHub was, I think what would have made me more interested is just knowing that there was a project that was really aligning with my interests. When I came to Embark, game development was always something I cared about. So now knowing that open source game development was a huge part of what Embark did, that got me super energized about getting involved with open source. So find something that really aligns with your interests. If it's in the Rust ecosystem, crates.io is a great place to start. Even looking on just GitHub for Rust projects. And then of course, if you want to jump into our ecosystem, I'm always here to answer questions about it. And this is our bonus fun fact to end off the presentation. The restaurant that I mentioned in the demo was inspired by a restaurant that does exist, and it's not a coding mistake. This picture is actually from the restaurant where they serve tire pizza, and I'm not sure what this is, but that, and even pumpkin pizza. It's called Pizzeria Bate Popo, and it's in Brazil. Apologies for the pronunciation, but it's a great place, and you should definitely check it out if you're over there. And finally, yeah, this presentation should only be the beginning. If you're new to open source, I hope this is just a first step, a second step, a third step. There are so many cool Rust projects to explore in Embark's ecosystem and beyond, and any other language. There's just so much stuff on GitHub. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. And I'm going to link the link to both this project and Embark Studios GitHub account, as well as our Discord if you want to start talking about Rust GPU or any of our other projects. But yeah, thanks so much.